Okay. Okay, it's just 5:00. We'll call a Transportation Commission meeting for February 22nd, 2023 to order. Stefan, if you'd please read our instructions.
Yep. Welcome to our virtual meeting. Oops. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members of the commission, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. In this meeting, panelists have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked the question. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. Staff will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair Kovich, floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. So we need 5 people for a quorum, and 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, looks like we have it. So Aiden, if you'd call a roll, please.
Sure. I'll start with Ann Kovich.
Here.
And Denise Jess.
I'm here.
Bridget Brown.
Yes, present.
Harold Clemes.
Here.
Darren Wozniewski.
Present.
Chris McCahill.
Here.
Oh.
And then we have Bill Bremer, Robbie Weber, and Patricia Bennett are all excused. I don't see Barbara Harrington McKinney or Alder Miadzi on yet.
Yeah, I don't either, but they may join soon. So,
sure.
Okay, good thing we're remote this evening. And Harold and Darren, you're both voting members all night, so we're good to go. Everybody have a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting. Darren?
I move to approve.
And Harold?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, we'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, motion is carried unanimously. Do we have any public comment this evening, Aiden? On item 1 or any of the others? I guess I'll ask you ahead of time just so I'm warned.
We have none for item 1.
Okay. Do we have any for any other items? I'll just note it down.
Give me a sec. I gotta pull up the report.
Sure. Okay. Why don't you do that, and I'll ask about disclosures and recusals, and then I'll come back to you. Any disclosures or recusals this evening? Okay. I'm going to move on to the consent agenda, and we're proposing the consent agenda for items number 2 through 4. So, Aiden, do we have any members of the public registered to speak on items 2 through 4?
We do not, and we have no speakers for tonight. At the moment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any items which members would like to have separated from the consent agenda? Okay, I'm seeing no hands. So we're proposing item number 2, which is Legistar 75755, item number 3, which is Legistar 75772, and item number 4, which is Legistar 75966 for the consent agenda. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda? Darren?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second? Chris?
Yeah, second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. We'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. Okay, seeing no hands raised. The consent agenda is approved. Okay, we will move on now to item number 5, which is the traffic signal priority list. Jerry and Yang, I would assume that would be you.
Yeah, that'd be Jerry. Jerry, go ahead.
Okay. All right, Jerry, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, this is to, I assume everyone's had a chance to read the material, but this is to discuss and get approval of staff recommendations for the intersections, for the studies that we've performed in our recommendations of the intersections that were requested for a signal to be installed. And if you don't mind, I will share my screen. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'm just going to kind of go over each one and give a quick what our recommendation is, and we can get into more detail after that.
Jerry, can you make your document bigger, so like get rid of the stuff that's on the side?
For that. Does that look better?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to scroll down and start here. The first 3 are going to be always stop intersections. The first one is American Parkway, Hepker, and Ratman. We are recommending maintaining the current always stop operation. It's an intersection that was below meeting warrant, and in our field observations during the peak times really didn't indicate there was any delay issue or any other issue, and neither did the crash history. The next one is Cross Country Road, Maple Grove Road, and Nesbitt Road, another 4-way stop intersection on the southwest side of town. This one's also below meeting signal warrant. Not enough crashes here to just to meet the crash warrant. And so we are recommending maintaining the existing stop control configuration. However, there's been some discussion internally about perhaps looking at a roundabout at some future time. I don't think there's anything definitively planned at the moment, but that has been something that's been discussed. So at that time, probably look at a couple different options. Next is Milwaukee Street, Sprecher. This is on the east side of town. This one is very similar to American Parkway and Ratman in Hepker, just up the road, where it's an always stop. It's a pretty big always stop intersection, but not one that meets any of the traffic signal warrants. So we're recommending maintaining the existing always stop operation. The difference with this one is there's a lot more activity going on right now at that area. So this is probably going to be one that is going to stay on the list in terms of us reviewing it maybe year after year. So we're going to keep an eye on this one, and this is probably one that we're going to end up studying in the next few years. So then moving on to the two-way or side street stop control intersections. Packer Schlingen. This is one that's been requested in the past, but was also requested again. There hasn't been much activity in the area, so we're recommending maintaining the existing stop control. Having said that, there is planned development in the area. So there's a development on the northwest corner, and then the Montessori School on the east side of the intersection is also expanding. So this is going to be one that we wait until those developments kind of finish up and are operating, and then we'll take another look at that and see how those developments impact this intersection. And I also should note this is an intersection that's on a connecting highway, so any recommendation we would have to run get approval from the state in terms of if we are eventually recommend a signal here. Next intersection is Monona Drive in Winnequa. This is new to the list. We did the full review of this one, and it fell pretty well below meeting any traffic signal warrants. There was a couple crashes that we did want to highlight, though. One of which would be a type considered correctable by a traffic signal, and that was someone biking across Monona Drive and then being hit by a driver driving on Monona. And the other is someone walking across Monona Drive and being hit by a driver turning left off the side street. Because we saw, kind of a trend in pedestrian and bike involved crashes, we are recommending kind of pushing this intersection over to the safe streets and maybe discussing this with the city of Monona, but something like a rectangular rapid flashing beacon or other crosswalk improvements could be made here. So not recommending a signal, but to add this to the Safe Streets Madison list. The next intersection is Sago Cow, Freedom Ring, and Valley View. This is another one that's new to the list and also did not come close to yet meeting any traffic signal warrants. So we're recommending maintaining the existing stop control configuration, and there is already a rectangular rapid flashing beacon on the west leg of the intersection. Next on the list is Hepker Manufacturers. This is on the north side of town, pretty far north, just east of Stoughton Road. There's a lot of industrial land use up in this area, and there's been some expansion. I think notably the FedEx development, but again, studies show that this does not meet any traffic signal warrant, so we are recommending maintaining the current stop control configuration. Next is North Franklin and East Johnson, two intersecting one-way streets. This is also downstream from a signal that is more or less fixed time right now. So there's every cycle going to be gaps in traffic for drivers coming off the side street or pedestrians crossing. But again, this did not meet any of the traffic signal warrants. However, there was a few crashes that we wanted to highlight here. Two crashes involving a northbound driver and eastbound, someone biking eastbound in the bike lane, and then two crashes involving a northbound driver and people coming from the right. So in one case, it was someone biking on the south sidewalk in the westbound direction. In the other case, it was someone walking in the westbound direction. So if you can imagine, a driver's probably pulling up to the intersection, looking left, and not paying attention to what's happening on their right, and most likely pulled out and hit those two people. So kind of because of that trend that we've seen, we're recommending adding this to the Safe Streets Madison list to see if there's any improvement here. And it's my understanding that there's already some plans for bike facilities on Franklin, so we might look to see if there's opportunity to address some of these crashes kind of with that project. And then the final intersection is Northport and Warner Park, the Warner Park driveway. This is a key intersection. Side street is stop controlled, and there's an older style pedestrian flashing beacon. It's the 12-inch amber ball that just flashes at like one flash per second. Did not meet any traffic signal warrant, and so we are recommending maintaining the existing stop control operation and then updating that flashing beacon to a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which should get drivers' attention more than just a flashing ball. So that's the quick rundown of all the intersections that were on our list. Also attached is the updated full list, where any intersection that's on that list that wasn't mentioned here did get its 12-month crash history updated. And at the moment, we're not recommending any intersections to have a traffic signal installed, and I'll open up to questions.
Hey, thanks, Jerry. But you did have some recommendations for additional safety measures on at least 3 of them right now, and some potential additional study in the future. So questions for Jerry? Anybody have any questions? It was a very thorough report, and we'll look forward to seeing them on the Safe Streets Madison upcoming list to see what might be able to be done to assist with safety at those intersections. Any questions for Jerry? Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, just a super quick one. I was happy to see the Monona and Winnequa is on the move to the Safe Streets list. Can you tell me where the school crossings are? There's one in that area, right? To get to Nichols or Monona Grove, or is that further away than that intersection?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where any official school crossings are in that area. Cold Springs Drive, which is about 1,000 feet to the south of that intersection, is a signalized intersection, and that would get you from kind of the west side of the street to the east side, close to the high school.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, that actually reminds me. I think if you're looking at that intersection for Safe Streets Madison, is the signalized intersection at Cold Springs, is that Monona or is that Madison?
That's a Monona signal that we maintain for them.
Okay, because one of the issues there, so that's part of the official Lake Loop, but it is I think that does not detect people on bikes on either of the approaches. So you get stuck at that intersection and then have to push the pedestrian button on the sidewalk, which is awkward to get to. So I guess my point is maybe looking at improving that intersection for people on bikes, because some people might be avoiding it because they know, like, oh, I'm gonna get stuck there again. So that might be something to look into.
Yeah, we can definitely look into that. There were some changes made within the last, I don't know, year or two that might have helped address that. That corridor ran in coordination, and it had pretty long coordinated cycles throughout the day. That was switched over to free operation. So I've been out there and I've not had a problem getting detected by bike, but that's also after that change. And so what might have happened is someone rides up, waits for a long time and thinks, I haven't been detected. I have to go push the button, or I'm just going to cross against the red. So we can take a look at the detection, make sure that's working. But I think that operation change should help.
Thank you. And that's good to hear that you made some changes. And yeah, it's entirely possible that my information is outdated.
Okay, thank you. Darren, go ahead.
Thanks, Ann. Jerry, I just have a question, since I'm still within or coming up on my first year here, so I haven't gone through one of these traffic signal lists. And I remember the discussion we had when you first presented it on Northport Drive and Warner Park, and the need to do something more there. I'm wondering, like, once the new beacon is installed, I mean, do you guys continue to study that anymore, or is that just sort of done with at that point?
We did some very limited studies after the installation of the RFB at Packer Schlingen and East Washington Melvin. And I mean, me and another coworker went out and kind of paced off what we would consider a reasonable, stopping reaction distance. Pushed the button when a platoon came and watched how many people stopped or blew past us. So based on those two kind of one-off field checks, I don't have that information off the top of in front of me, but I believe it was pretty much in line with what the original RFB compliance out of Florida was, which was around 82% of drivers yielded. And that was I remember at the time thinking that was kind of better than we were expecting, considering it was a higher speed road and more lanes. Those were the only 2 times I know of that we've gone out and done like a follow-up compliance review.
Thanks. That's just helpful to know. I wasn't sure what the protocol was for once they're installed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, that's a general topic that, Harold, you remember we talked about that at the traffic calming subcommittee. You know, we recommend improvements and we're always wondering, well, how'd they work? You know, so, you know, I know it's tough because you have, I mean, Yang, your staffing issues are, you know, tough. So it's difficult to always go back and do that, but it's tough to know how effective these solutions are if we don't go back and measure it at some point. So I don't know if there's some random sampling that you can do as we make these safety improvements. You know, we talked about this relative to Safe Streets Madison too. So maybe just something to think about, not something to talk about tonight, but you know, Darren's got a great point and something we've talked about before. So, you know, maybe something that we should just consider talking about from time to time as, you know, you have staff who has the ability to take a look at that. Other comments or questions? Excuse me. Okay, we need a motion to approve staff's recommendations. Harold.
Move approval.
And Darren, is that a second?
That's a second, yes.
Okay. Did you wish to speak to your motion at all, Harold?
No, I mean, this makes sense. Staff gave a compelling presentation, so let's do it.
Okay. All right. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no hands, we're going to assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay. We'll record that as a unanimous motion. Okay, thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
And thank you, Yang. Okay, next, we have our quarterly traffic safety report. And as you all may remember, Lieutenant Tony Fiore retired at the end of, last fall it was. So the last quarterly traffic report was his last report that he brought forward to us. And so we have Lieutenant Jennifer Hanna with us this evening to do the tonight's quarterly traffic safety report. So Lieutenant Hanna, I see you there. Great, welcome. I don't know if you maybe want to just introduce yourself to the commission so that everybody has a chance to get to know you a little bit.
Sure. So Jennifer Hanna, I've been with the department since 2004, newly to this position, as Ann just said. A lot of what I'm going to show you tonight, I took from Tony's presentation and changed up a few things. So if there's something that you don't like or you want me to bring back, please let me know. I'm a little bit nervous about being on a meeting, so bear with me as I get through this first one.
We're a pretty friendly group, so.
You seem friendly. All right. Do you want me to try to share my screen then?
Sure, that would be great.
All right,
and you should be able to do that, right, Stefan?
Yep. You should have the capability to share. There we go.
All right. Can everybody see that?
We can.
All right. Super. So obviously this is the fourth quarter report. And we'll just go over a couple things that you probably have already been exposed to, but just a reminder for those of you that maybe don't know. We had a few traffic enforcement goals for 2022. One of them was to focus on the high injury network, which we identified as East Washington Avenue, the Beltline, and Mineral Point Road. Those three streets account for a lot of crashes in the city of Madison, so that became a high priority for us. We decided to focus on hazardous moving violations. Obviously, dangerous driving coincides with crashing into things. So In that same token, we also decided to de-emphasize non-hazardous violations. And in lieu of writing a citation for a non-hazardous violation, we supported writing warnings instead. Hopefully, people would feel good about getting a warning and maybe would be compelled to take care of the things that they need to take care of, which are usually things like registration, maybe a broken headlight, something of that nature. Our test team also decided to really put in some effort with the school zone safety. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. And of course, the number one complaint to the city of Madison is traffic. So that is always one of the things that we're going to do. We want to respond to our citizens and make sure that they are happy with what we're doing, and hopefully we can change some driving behavior along the way. You've seen this before. It's just our traffic grant corridors and then that high injury network. When we focused on these streets, what we would do is officers, so as part of our strategic plan, when you see an officer sitting at the side of the road or maybe in the median in the middle, and they're running traffic, this year what officers had to do was they would pull a case number and then they would label it as strategic plan traffic. And this is the way that we could really focus on how much of our time, how much of our officers' time was being focused on these three roads. So 20% of citywide enforcement, citywide traffic enforcement occurred on East Washington Avenue, 10% on the Beltline, and 4% on Mineral Point Road. When you talk about citations and warnings that were issued in the high injury network, 19.8% of all citations and warnings issued in the city were issued on East Wash. 9.8% of all citations and warnings issued were issued on the Beltline, and 3.6% of all citations and warnings issued in the city were issued on Mineral Point Road. A graph that you've probably already seen before several times. Let me just kind of move you all up here. Just to show hazardous citations, non-hazardous citations, and of course the warnings. And as you can see, we have stuck with our plan, which is to decrease citations for non-hazardous and increase the warnings. So we've done a good job with that. Our officers have done a good job. And if you're wondering about the dip there, Tony probably already told you, obviously during COVID, a lot of people weren't going out. So we had some pretty good traffic numbers as far as people weren't on the road. But we've bumped back up to where we normally are. Just another way to look at it. I'm not a big line graph person, so maybe this chart, if you prefer that. Again, hazardous, non-hazardous, and warnings from 2017, quarter one, 2017 through 2022, quarter four. The thing I like that I prefer is actually seeing numbers. So I'm hoping that you all find this information useful. It breaks out what the Madison Police Department determines or decided what a hazardous violation is and a non-hazardous violation. So this is just 2020 to the present, but you can see by each quarter all the things that we have cited people for. And again, obviously the hazardous violations, as we know from the charts, outweigh the non-hazardous violations. When I passed this along to some members of my team, they brought up a really good point about hit and runs. And I'm not sure that hit and run should be in the category of non-hazardous violations. I think given the events of last week with the hit and run fatality on Schrader Road, running into something, running into someone, that to me seems hazardous. So I'll look into moving that to that other category, unless you all have objections.
No, that makes sense to me. Anybody have any objection to that or other ideas or comments? It seems to make sense to everybody, Jen.
Okay. Do you want me, Chris, do you want to go ahead? Do you have a question?
Go ahead, Chris. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Okay. I guess I'm not sure it makes sense. One thing I'm wondering is if like someone got a citation for a hit and run, and it was a serious injury, wouldn't they get also a citation for it being like a fender bender hit and run doesn't seem like a serious hazardous violation.
Right. My argument would be that running into anything while operating a vehicle is hazardous. I mean, we could totally talk about hit and runs that cause serious injury and fatality. But again,
I'd have to think. I don't remember how we drew the line between hazardous and non-hazardous. That's just my question, I guess.
okay. And it's my question
yeah.
to you as well. So if you feel like that,
I have to stew on it a little bit, I think, and
Yep.
just remember what the classifications are. Thanks.
sure, no
Chris,
problem.
Chris, is this from your subcommittee that you work on relative to Vision Zero?
It's just an instinctive reaction. I forget what we're considering hazardous and non-hazardous, but I know, yeah, that's all.
Okay, thanks. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, I think thinking about it in the context of Vision Zero is a good one, but that may also apply to some of the other ones where, like, yeah, hazardous but not resulting in serious injury or death, or hazardous and doing that. And yeah, I'm also not totally sure how that applies to hit and run. I guess the other comment I was going to make about reclassifying things, I think it's just good to be mindful of what that does to the historic numbers and how we can compare things over time. So, suddenly we see an uptick in hazardous violations, and that's just because we reclassified some of these. So I think that's just something for us to keep in mind when we look at these numbers going forward, if we do change what counts as one versus the other.
Oh, that's an excellent point.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of consistency in how we look at Safe Streets Madison, incorporating Vision Zero in, and what Harold was talking about relative to fatalities and serious injury. So there's been a lot of focus on that in the high injury network as we look at that, and that data translates over into Safe Streets Madison to help us prioritize where we use our funds to take advantage of making things safer. So it makes some sense, and I think that's why we focus on the fatalities that you're going to talk about later, and trying to focus on that. So just something to keep in mind as we're looking at how to crunch the data. And Tony did a lot of work. He worked with Yang and changed significantly what we were looking at in the quarterly traffic safety reports. But that doesn't mean we can't, make modifications and enhancements as we go forward. Ideas that you have are certainly welcome, and the commission members are always very vocal about trying to address what's going to help us better understand traffic safety, which prepares us to make decisions about those traffic safety improvements that are brought to us to evaluate.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Anyone else?
Chris, go ahead.
Yep. I guess just to tie a bow on the earlier point, I was able to pull up the data from when I was on that committee. It does look like non-hazardous violations tend to be things like license and registration, equipment violations, and things that otherwise wouldn't cause any safety concerns. So I think that probably does make sense to reclassify hit and run, but I think Harold's point about just being careful about when we do that makes sense.
Absolutely. We can look into that further.
Thank you.
All right, just another graph here to show again our emphasis.
We do have, excuse me,
I'm sorry.
Jen, we do have, Denise has a comment.
Oh, you know what? I probably can, I'm just concurring with it, and really.
We lost you there. You're muted. Somehow you got muted, Denise.
Oh, sorry. My screen reader was yelling at me, so I was trying to silence it. Yeah, I would really like to see us classify that as hazardous. I'm sorry, if you hit something, you don't drive away. It's just, it seems absurd because it really is, so yeah, differentiation between the level of incident, I think would be great, but classifying any of that as hazardous feels really important.
And we can certainly talk more about this down the track. It's just something to consider that it was really feedback that my entire team had about hit and run. So just something to think about. Certainly we can go either way.
Well, it sounds like everybody here is agreeing with your team, so.
Well, they're a good team, so.
Okay.
And so again, do you want me to continue?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, all right. And just another graph showing hazardous versus non-hazardous citations. Pretty self-explanatory. If you want to go back to 2017 through present day, this chart just lays it all out in hard, cold numbers. Again, citations for hazardous, non-hazardous, and warnings are given. So if you want to see how we've done over the course of several quarters, over several years, just take a look at that. I'm going to talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about our traffic grants. I'm not sure how much you know about the traffic grants that we run with the Dane County Sheriff's Department. So we are a partner of the Dane County Sheriff's Department. They get grant money from the Department of Transportation, and we join them in utilizing that money to do traffic grants. So when a traffic grant occurs, it's 5 officers and one of our test members. The test member will run the grant because there's documentation that needs to be done that we need to provide to the state. And so that's why we assign one of our traffic officers to run those grants. The other officers, it's all volunteer. They put into work these grants. And again, everything is made possible and paid for by the Department of Transportation. So depending on the time of year, there's 4 different grants that we run. There's alcohol, seatbelt, speeding, and then pedestrian and bike safety. And depending on the time of the year is when some of these are run. Obviously, the goal of these patrols is not only to enhance public safety, but obviously our goal is to prevent needless tragedies. The important thing about the traffic grant activity is it isn't just confined to the 3 streets that we've identified as the high injury network. The traffic grants have some rules that we have to follow, and I'll kind of go into that so you can hopefully understand what's going on with those. So the traffic grants, the state requires us to run grant activity after 6 p.m. on Friday and Saturday nights. 50% of seatbelt grant activity must take place at 6 p.m. or after 6 p.m., and that can be any night. In addition, we also participate with the Department of Transportation's campaigns, Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over, and Click It or Ticket. The City of Madison, we manage our own pedestrian and bike grants. So even though those grants are also funded by the Wisconsin DOT, we don't work with the county on those grants. Those are strictly ours. So during 2022, we deployed, here are the deployments. We had 74 impaired driving deployments, 40 seatbelt, 32 speeding, and 28 pedestrian and bike safety. Those enforcement efforts led to 1,702 citations and 2,657 warnings. And on average, each deployment, there was 25 citations and warnings. This chart kind of breaks things out a little bit. It breaks out the 4 different grants. And you'll notice that for some quarters, there's no activity. So alcohol and seatbelt grants are run throughout the year. The speed enforcement grants are run April through September, and as are the pedestrian and bike safety grants. And obviously that's just due to weather. It just makes sense to run those obviously when folks are out. So when you look at those numbers and how the citations are issued, when they're issued, just please keep that in mind. And we run the grants until the money runs out. Does anyone have any question about traffic grants? All right. Unfortunately, we'll talk now about the fatality crashes that occurred in the city of Madison in 2022 and specifically the fourth quarter. So we had a total of 14 fatality crashes in 2022. That is the same number that occurred in 2021. Of those 14, 3 of them occurred on the Beltline, 2 were on Mineral Point Road, and there were 4 fatality crashes in the fourth quarter of the year. So I'll summarize the 4 that happened in the fourth quarter. The first one you've already seen because for whatever reason it was attached to the third quarter report. And so that is the motorcycle crash that occurred on the Beltline on the 2nd of October, 7:17 p.m. The motorcyclist was negotiating the exit ramp from the eastbound Beltline to southbound Highway 14. He lost control and crashed. We suspect that there was impaired driving that was a causative factor. The second crash of the fourth quarter occurred on October 11th, 6:39 p.m. The location of that crash was Mineral Point and High Point Road. It was a car versus pedestrian. And if you can visualize this, the vehicle was traveling westbound on Mineral Point Road and wanted to take a left onto High Point. When it was taking that left turn, the car struck a pedestrian who was walking westbound, crossing High Point, and that pedestrian was in the crosswalk. Because there was no evidence of criminal behavior, the DA's office declined prosecution. There were a lot of things going on that night. First of all, it was raining heavily. The pedestrian was wearing dark clothing, and obviously it was dark at that time of night. I believe that intersection, there might not be a lot of light over there as well, so that may have also been a factor. I think it's pretty dark over there. The third crash of the fourth quarter also occurred in October. That was a bad month. This is one that got a lot of press. It happened at 6:50 a.m. on the 27th on John Nolan Drive in North Shore. It was a car versus bike. So what happened during that was the bicyclist started to cross John Nolan Drive. He did not have a signal to go across there, but he started to go across because if you watch the video, the biker in front of him went across, no problem, and he probably just followed suit or thought he could make it. The involved driver was coming inbound on John Nolan Drive at a high rate of speed. He sped up and drove through the red light instead of stopping for it. And the bicyclist struck the side of the truck as it was passing through the intersection. Our analysts, our investigators were able to determine that he was going over 60 miles an hour through that intersection. They also determined that he had plenty of time to stop based on where he was on the bridge. And so that case actually is going to just now get charged out. The factors in this crash, obviously speed of the driver and then failure to obey traffic signals by both the bicyclist and the driver. It was just an unfortunate incident for everyone. He probably thought he could make it. And then the final crash occurred on the 4th of December at 11:03 p.m. Happened on Pleasant View and Flagstone Drive. This was a single car crash. The driver, who was a younger person, I believe teens or early 20s, was speeding, lost control of the vehicle. The car left the road and hit an electric pole. So obviously the investigators went through, tried to locate video, and they were able to determine based on video that she was driving very, very fast. I don't know exactly how fast, but too fast for that area. And then this chart just shows obviously the number of serious injuries and fatal crashes.
Can we stop for a second? Do we have any questions on the fatalities? Alder Miadzi, go ahead.
I just wanted to, there was a crash that happened on Highway CV. I know the fatality and person died at the hospital, but if you can just touch on that, any updates about that?
Sure. The at-fault driver is the decedent. It appears as though alcohol was most likely involved. And what happened was he rear-ended a vehicle that was waiting to make a turn, a left turn onto another street. So he just ran up the back end of that car. Obviously, since he is deceased, that case will not go anywhere, and the other driver was not injured.
Is there anything that we're actually looking for as far as that street to see if it can be possibly safer? I know there's a lot of traffic on that street.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can certainly tell the district to maybe up some enforcement activity. It is interesting how busy that has gotten out there. I think with how fast Sun Prairie and Wanakee and some of these areas and how folks are coming into the city. I have noticed too that the traffic over there has increased. The only thing I can think of is that increased patrols and our presence might deter some bad driving.
Yeah, Yang, are you aware of any safety improvements in that particular area that are under consideration?
Yeah, we have been looking at improvements for the area, in a while, and actually already made some improvements on there. For this case though, yeah, we are still trying to, figure out exactly what happened and to see what can be done. I'm not sure whether there is a lot we can do. But definitely, we'll work with Jan and her team, on the enforcement and also, identify other opportunity for improvements. But I think for engineering measures, sometimes it can have can make a difference. But sometimes, when especially for intoxicated driving, it's very hard, for engineering measure alone to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Did you have anything else, Alder?
I know that Dane County CV really owns that road, so it'd be nice to partner and see what we can do, and partner with them to see if we can also work together. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody have any other comments or questions? I just had a follow-up with regard to the comment about lighting at Mineral Point and High Point. Yang, is that something that somebody could just take a peek at? Not that you necessarily have to come back to us, but there was a question about the lighting at that particular intersection. And if that's something that could be an improvement that we could look at down the road if that was a contributing factor, maybe that would be something to consider.
Yeah, thank you. We actually has been proactive for the intersection, and we actually applied and received a federal grant to do some improvements at the intersection.
Good.
Involving almost $1 million of work over there. So yeah, we'll also take a look at the lighting. The lighting, from so that was actually before this fatal crash late last year, and before that, for those serious injury and fatal crashes over there, lighting was not big factor in there. But for this one might be different. So we'll definitely take a look at the latest data to see what additional components that the city maybe can add our own cost to supplement the federal grant money to make more improvements down there. Yeah, I think this one will probably be a little bit more easier for us to identify countermeasures to intervene from the kind of engineering side than the county CV. Yeah, and thank you, other Miyake. Yeah, we are working with the county on that stretch of the road trying to make improvements as well.
Thank you, Yang. Alder, go ahead.
Just one more question. Does MPD follow up with DNV in order to work on strategic measures as far as safety wise? If you could just touch on that, if there's any grants that MPD works closely with DNV.
None that I'm aware of.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Jen.
Sure, and just a comment on that Mineral Point Road. I mean, really, it was just a perfect storm of very unfortunate circumstances. That, I mean, who would think that someone would be out in the rain, and so it it was a combination of a lot of factors, probably not just the lighting over there. As you can see, over the course of several years, it's been Q2 2019. That's the last time we didn't have any fatalities, and as you can see, we've had 1 to 6 every quarter since. Also unfortunate. Just a line graph to show how we're trending. You find that useful. Again, we're staying relatively somewhat consistent with fatalities. Obviously, the crashes go up and down based on what's happening in the world. One of the things that the test team decided was a priority was the school zone safety. So they really took it upon themselves to tackle that. So for those of you that don't know, the Madison Police Department's traffic enforcement and safety team consists of 4 officers and a sergeant. That's it. That's the only team that is specifically assigned to focus on traffic. And as one of their goals this year, they wanted to obviously make school safety a priority. So every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, those officers begin their day at a specific school. They have a calendar, it's a rotation calendar, and they follow this throughout the school year to make sure that they get to every school. We get a lot of complaints from crossing guards, bus drivers. A lot of complaints come in that way. So if there is a certain school that is an issue, but maybe isn't on the rotation calendar, doesn't mean that they're not going to go over there. They'll go over and address that situation. So the school rotation calendar is just a guide, if you will, to keep them, to make sure that they're seen in all the school areas. Mondays and Fridays, the test officers focus on issues in their respective districts. Each one of those officers is assigned to their own district. And so those are the days that they focus on east, north, south, wherever they happen to be assigned. With that. And obviously, test members have been working closely with traffic engineering. We found that simple signage has really, really helped safety in those school zones, like no U-turn or, no right turn, things like that. Because you get a lot of parents who, in the drop-off line, tend to create more problems than you realize. And it's a danger problem.
Yeah. Excuse me, Jen. Alder Harrington McKinney, did you have a question for Jen?
I think she answered it, because I wanted to just have an idea of what kinds of an example of what those officers observed when they were doing that rotation. And I think that you mentioned a couple, and so I just wanted to have an idea of their station there. But is there a consistency, or what are they seeing? What's rising to the top? So that
Sure.
would be my question.
It is mostly speeding through a school zone and a total disregard for crosswalks, which I think is something that is a citywide problem, not just a school zone problem. But yeah, I mean, you have people who are just zipping through there and not paying attention, not stopping. Those are the 2 biggest. All right. And then finally, traffic complaints. Obviously, I told you earlier that traffic is the #1 complaint that the Madison Police Department gets. So of course, our goal is to address those. And as you can see through the years and by quarter, how many complaints we get, it would make sense that the summer months are probably they're obviously always higher than the rest of them because people are out and about, spring and summer. And then this just breaks down traffic complaints citywide and by district. So if you are an alder in one of those districts, you can see how many complaints we've gotten per quarter since 2020, which might help, might be interesting to you that some of your constituents are complaining about some things in your district. And that is all I have. Does anyone have any other questions?
Other questions or comments for Lieutenant Hannah? And thank you so much, Jen, for providing all that great information. Other comments or questions? Okay, we would need a motion to accept the report. Alder Miazzi?
Motion to accept the report. I'm sorry, I'm in two different meetings, but yeah.
Okay.
Motion to accept the report.
Okay. Denise, I see you putting your hand up. Is that a second?
It's a second.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no hands, the motion is carried unanimously, unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. Okay, again, seeing no hands, the motion is carried, and thank you very much. Excellent report, and as you can see, people are not shy about asking questions, giving feedback, and it's great information. Yeah, it's great information for us because it helps us better understand safety and what we may as a commission be able to do to help improve traffic safety. Yang, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. So before we move on from this item, I just want to report that one of my staff members, Jerry, who just presented on the signal party list, reminded me that we're actually going to piggyback on the BRT project on Muir Point Road, and we're going to improve lighting through that project, including the Muir Point and High Point intersection. So
good.
I want to let people know.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, and so yeah, thanks so much for that report, and we'll look forward to seeing you next quarter. And you're always welcome to join the meeting if there's a topic that you see that's of interest to you. So.
Thank you. And if you find anything in that report that needs more clarification, or you need more information, or you want to see something that's not in there, please just let me know.
Sure. And anybody who has any ideas, you can either send it to Aiden, who can forward it, or you can send it to Yang, because Yang, you work really closely with Jen, as you did with Tony Fiore. So if anybody has any comments or questions, please feel free to forward them. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Item 7, Yang has some Vision Zero safety data updates for us.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So I'm going to bring up a slide and go to presentation mode so you can see a little bit better. Yeah, so Jim provided a really good report, for the last quarter. So my update will be more from the Vision Zero perspective, and also we'll cover last couple of years. So that's a kind of major difference. But you can already see some trend from Lieutenant Hannah's report. So he provides some really useful data in there. So I will not repeat those. So I will be pretty quick on this item. So first, I want to report to this committee some progresses that we made on Vision Zero in 2022. As you remember, that one of the big achievement for us is to complete a comprehensive Vision Zero action plan that was adopted by the Common Council March last year. So it really provides a roadmap, for us to follow, including many different strategies in a lot of different areas. So really, taking a systems approach for traffic safety, including safe streets, safe people, safe vehicles, safety data, and safety-focused enforcement, as you heard report from Lieutenant Hannah. And we have been working with this body, rolling out the Safe Streets Medicine projects. So that was the first year of the new program, and we definitely saw lots of good projects being approved, and those are really focus on our high injury network. Those are the ones that can really make a difference. So instead of based on number of complaints, we're really based the decisions on data. So yeah, we had quite a bit experience with that, as we discussed at our meetings before. One big improvement we saw last year is our community engagement. We did a lot of enhancement to our approach of engaging communities, and we have taken advantage of many community events, and having staff members go into neighborhoods, especially traditionally underserved neighborhoods, to engage the public, to learn about their needs, and to hear their feedback, and also trying to foster a positive safety culture in our community. As a result of that engagement, we actually gathered quite a few traffic ideas as well that we end up bring to the Safe Streets program. And we have been really changing our design and operations philosophies for our transportation infrastructure. We heard a lot and clear from our engagement events that we should prioritize safety over speed, and we're really trying to create an environment that making sure all users are safe. Whether you walk, bike, or driving, you can get home safely every day. Also, lots of community members, needs accommodations. So we're trying to be very mindful on that, trying to be really inclusive in our infrastructure. Operation-wise, we made similar changes. We saw a lot of speed management projects. And also, when we do signal timing, we prioritize more on pedestrians and other vulnerable users. I think you really see that philosophy in many, actually, all of our projects, whether it's a larger projects like reconstruction projects, or small projects, simply maintaining good level lighting at intersections, things like that. And we have received a fair number of recognitions, both locally and nationally, including National League of Cities, the National Association of City Transportation Officials, and the US DOT. So it's something that I feel like it's not really just achieved by staff team, but really by the whole community, including this community. And as you know, we have been pretty aggressively pursuing federal safety grants, including federal highway safety grants. We received 3 grants recently, and also the Safe Streets for All grant. That's a new one, and we had a pretty big ask, but we were awarded a partial grant, and I think many of you already aware of that. And we're going to send out an official news release later this week to tell the community that we got that grant. Okay, and then let's get into the data. So before I talk about this data, I want to first explain that you may notice some discrepancies on detailed numbers in this data set from the data that Lieutenant Hannah just presented. That is because we track data a little bit differently. So for NPD, their database has all the crashes that the NPD responded to, under those under NPD investigation. Sometimes respond to areas that actually outside of city medicine limits, and sometimes other police agencies, respond to streets that's in a city medicine limits, depending on situation. But our data actually comes from the Wisconsin Traffic Operations and Safety Lab, which is part of the UW Madison. They are on contract with the state to maintain a state database. So for our data set, we look at everything within the city medicine limits, but everything only within city limits. So if it happens on the border, but it's for example, it's in Monona, we're not going to consider that. And also, if it's in city medicine, if someone else, like maybe Monona Police Department respond to the incident, like on Idaho Avenue, because they're closer, we're going to include that as well. So that we thought that's for our purpose, that's a better way to look at the data. That's a better way to track them. Also, I want to mention that this data includes all roadways in the city medicine limits, including some of those that's not maintained by the city medicine and maintained by other agencies, like County CV, for example, that we just talked about that fatal crash earlier this year. That's under Dane County control. The city actually has no control at all, but it's within city medicine limits, so we include those. Other examples include Bowline, Stoughton Road, for example. So with that in mind, so we kind of go back to the last 4 years from 2019. We started with 2019 because that's kind of the I would say the last normal years before the pandemic started. So it kind of helped establish a baseline. And for total number of crashes, we actually see that in 2019 we had over 5,000 of them. In 2020, that reduced to 3,243. That's due to really large reduction in travel in the city and everywhere in the country. So actually everywhere in the country see the same trend. The total number of crashes went down in 2020. And in 2021, 2022, as we see more people getting back to the road, as we traffic recovers, on some of city streets almost recovers to like over 90% of the usual capacity, and we saw the total number of crashes increased slightly compared to 2020. The number of injuries that includes all the injuries, serious injuries and minor injuries. As long as just very minor injury is counted here. For that we saw the trend that in 2019 from 2019 to 2020 at the winter pandemic, injury went down significantly. The good thing is that the injury kept going down slightly, even the total number of crashes going up in 2020 and in 2022. And we have the total number of fatalities over here as well. And one thing I want to point out is that you can see that in 2020 there's a huge jump over there. In 2021, so from up to the HANA's data, we had a 14. But for this data set, we have 17 when we consider everything medicine roads. In 2022, that will reduce a little bit to 14. For numbers, but for fatalities, we see that like at least for our city, we're a small city, but relatively few fatalities, so it's a really small sample. There's a lot of randomness over there. So I think for Vision Zero purpose, when we look at eliminating fatalities and serious injuries, I always think it's more appropriate to include a number of serious injuries as well. For a few reasons. One, serious injuries is really serious. It's defined as capacity injuries, so it really changes people's lives. So have a huge impact, on the person and on the family. The second reason is that any of these serious injuries can actually be a fatality if the condition has changed a little bit. So these are definitely serious things, and our goal of Vision Zero is to really looking at both together. So that's why. So total number of serious injuries, we saw a big jump in 2020, but since that we saw a steady decline significantly for 2 consecutive years. So then when we add the both fatality serious injuries up, again from 2019 to 2020 when pandemic started, we had a 20% increase almost, and then after that we had a 17% decrease in 2021, and in 2022 we saw another 13% decrease. So in total, since we started the Vision Zero initiative in 2020, we saw a 29% decrease in number of fatalities and serious injuries. So this kind of representation of the data. So I feel this graph really tells a lot. Again, I think when you consider fatalities and serious injury together, it really gives you a large enough example, large enough sample that can really mean something. So again, from 2020 to 2022, fatalities and serious injuries declined by 29%. So I thought that's a pretty significant achievement. One thing I want to note is that 2022 we had 90 total fatalities and serious injuries, and that's even below the pre-pandemic level of 2019, which was at 106. And this is considered, right, for the national data. If you have looked at some of those, the national data is telling you a different story. So nationally, 2022, so 2021 actually is worse than 2020. 2021 was I think the worst year of the last few decades. Depending on how you look at it, you look at the fatalities only or looking at pedestrian fatalities. But either way, it's the worst year for the last couple of decades or so. And 2022 is about the same. So here in Madison, we saw the trend, very different trend. And you will also pretty soon going to see the data released for the countywide data by the Dane County Traffic Safety Commission. And unfortunately, you're going to see the trend that's different from this data. Another representation of the data. I feel we can learn a couple of things from here. So the thick blue line here represents the total number of crashes. So again, 2019 to 2020, that's a huge drop. After that, slight increase in total crashes. But total injuries, so these total injuries went down in 2020 and continue to went down slightly for the last couple of years. It's a very different story for fatalities and serious injuries. It did went up in 2020, but since 2020, since we started work on vision there, since we started taking a different approach, things really came down significantly, for 2 years now. I'm pretty sure there's going to be up and downs for us in the future. But as the Vision Zero team, we're really encouraged by the data, and we feel like we're doing something right. That we are seeing different results, than the countywide data, than the nationwide data. Especially, the data, exactly matches what we're trying to achieve here, right? The essence of Vision Zero is not to prevent all crashes. As we know, no matter what we do, we are all humans. We're going to make mistakes. But the game is that when crashes happen, how can we make it less deadly, less serious? So I think here you can see that you can see that we achieved that. But we still have a large number of fatalities and serious injuries in the city. There are 90 of them. We still have a lot of work to do, given the success. Here I want to thank the commission, for all the guidance on the initiative. I also want to, thank our community for the collaboration, with the city on achieving, this success. But I will say that, our work is not done yet, and we'll keep working on it until we achieve our goal of the preventable traffic fatalities and serious injuries. Really, we believe, all the fatalities and the serious injuries should be preventable. So, thank you.
Thank you, Yang. Alder Harrington McKinney, go ahead. You're muted, Alder.
Okay, thank you so very much for the statistics. You are absolutely correct. The Vision Zero has been a model that other municipalities have been asking for information. And if I'm out of order, this is out of the quarter, please let me know. I know that the fatality that happened over on Schrader is in 2023, and that's still under investigation. But is there any, from your knowledge, a look at improvements over there? Is that on your agenda to look at lighting, whatever improvements that could be over there? Have you started that process of giving a look-see there? That's my question.
Yeah, thank you, Alder Harrington McKinney. That's a wonderful question, actually. It hit the news a lot in the last few days. It was a tragedy last week on Schroeder Road. We had a hit and run near Struck Street. And a 60-year-old resident was walking his dog, and both the resident and the dog were killed in a crash. And then the driver left the scene. So the police department is still working on the finding the suspect, and we're still trying to figure out what happened. But yes, we have been working on the corridor for quite a while in the last few years. We made actually quite a few improvements already along the corridor. Changing it from the four-lane roadway to a two-lane roadway with bike lane and a center turning lane. Really trying to create a feel like of a narrow street. We definitely notice that some people are driving very, very fast over there, and the design of the street, definitely, and also the land use, right? We don't have a lot of driveways fronting the Schroeder corridor, and so people kind of feel like the road is kind of wide. People can feel like they can drive pretty fast. And from the past crashes, there are also quite a bit of DUI involved. So yeah, we have been reviewing the data, has been making quite a few other improvements as well. Like in the last few years, we installed the pedestrian refugee islands at the strategic locations. We installed a few pedestrian flashing lights to help people cross the street, and reminded the drivers to slow down for pedestrians. And last year, we also improved lighting on the corridor. So we did a lot of work with Madison Gas and Electric. And we also actually, before this last tragedy happened, we had 3 projects already programmed for the corridor. Actually, was part of the Safe Streets Madison program approval last year. So we had 3 pedestrian refugee islands program for the area. But last year, we're struggling with finding contractors. When we find contractors, they didn't have time to install those last year. But we'll definitely want to make sure those are getting installed this year. And we'll also keep looking for other opportunities to improve the corridor. It's definitely a challenging corridor. It has been on our radar, and we'll do more work on that.
Good. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to give a heads up because, of course, the community around there have been talking about the speeding, and it's a dangerous area. And so I'm glad that you're taking a look-see at it so that, when they start asking questions, at least you'll be able to talk about, what the plan is, and so that they'll have a sense that the city is aware that it is a dangerous intersection there, and you are moving toward making some improvements. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Other comments or questions for Yang? Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for all of the updates. You mentioned the Safe Streets for All grant. I assume we're going to put in another application for the next round for the implementation funding, because I think that's going to open in April again.
You got it. Yeah, great question. Yes. So right now, the plan is that to work with the MPO, and we're going to do a regional application. So if you look at the large grants that was given out this year, and those are mostly, I guess, first of all, it's mostly aligned with the US DOT, the kind of the fatality heat map that they released this month. So those basically, the grants was given to areas with a lot of fatalities. I guess it's a good thing. Or you can see, unfortunately, that Madison, didn't show up on the heat map. So we're doing pretty good on safety, but we do still have our need here. So we still have people dying on our roads, and but among those communities that the Gallup picked, most of the projects are kind of for large corridors and for large intersection treatments, instead of citywide approach to address things, kind of fundamentally address things. So I think USD to focus, as we discussed before, maybe for this round, maybe to look at reduce for number of fatalities using the money, maybe instead of funding a community that actually can achieve zero death and zero serious injuries. So yeah, so we thought, I mean, we put together a very strong application, and we end up, I think they told us that there are 4 stages of evaluation. We passed the first 3 stage, and we end up on the Secretary, US DOT Secretary's desk. But we're not able to fully fund our application. They only give us a small funding for some supplemental planning activities. We do want to keep implementing the things that we mentioned in our action plan. So what we do is that the plan right now is to collaborate with our the surrounding municipalities, work with the MPO, as they already had an intention to apply for the federal grant, and Madison definitely it helps Madison to be a big part of that. So we're thinking about maybe doing some kind of large corridor projects. However, though, that right now there's some concerns because this year the NOFO, the notice for finding opportunities, will come out early in April, and it will be, so last year it came out a bit later, and September was the deadline for application. So this year people think that the application deadline might be advanced as well, maybe to sometime like June or July-ish. And so MPO is worried that that may not be enough time for them first to finish original safety action plan, and then apply for the implementation grant. So if that's the case, I think that we will put together another application our own, if the MPO cannot do an application for the region. So I think that I know it's going to be a lot of work. The time not going to be short, just like last year. But I'm confident in our ability to do that. It needs some hard work, but I think it's worthwhile to putting another application for it, especially since we still have the local match money that's in our budget, contingent on our getting the grant. So I will see. No matter what, we're going to have another try.
Good. Yeah, I would definitely encourage you if the regional approach makes a lot of sense, but if that does not happen because of the timeline, I mean, there were so many transformative projects in what we put in last year that if it had been funded, it would have been great. And so, yeah, for the city to put in some kind of application, I would strongly support that. Thank you.
Other comments or questions for Yang? I know you all have put in a lot of time applying for grants, and that's a time-consuming process and an exacting process. So thanks for pursuing everything. And it's unfortunate we didn't get more, but as you said, it's for a good reason, because our fatalities are less than those folks who did get the grants. Other comments or questions for Yang? Hey, great report, Yang. Thank you so much for providing us with this update. Any last questions for Yang? Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Next, I have an update. We had appeals subcommittee hearing on Monday. Denise, Darren, and I served on the appeals subcommittee. In this particular case, after the presentations from the Madison Police Department, which was Captain Winter, and the appellant was Brandon Bentley, we upheld the denial of the permit. There have been cases in the past where evidence of rehabilitation has been presented to us, and we have voted to grant the permit. In this particular case, the infractions had been incurred very recently, and there really wasn't any time to show any kind of rehabilitation. So we did tell him that, you know, we encouraged him to apply again once there was some time to show that that he had turned things around. So in this particular case, we did uphold the denial. So anybody have any questions on that? I promised to give you an update. Okay. Crossover report from TPBB. You didn't have a meeting since we had our last TC meeting. So I assume, is there any updates from the Transportation Policy and Planning Board? Other than we have a joint meeting coming up, which I'll talk about in a minute. Okay. So in terms of general announcements, you should have a placeholder invitation on your calendars for the joint TC-TPBB meeting on Monday, March 6th at 5 o'clock. And that's really the only announcement that that I have this evening, is just a reminder of that. And unless anybody have any other announcements? Okay. In terms of future agenda items, we talked about the potential agenda items for the joint TC-TPBB meeting on the 6th at our last TC meeting. We did have a meeting yesterday, and it looks like the timing to have folks from the fire department come in is not going to work out this time. So we'll keep it on the list for our future meeting. Because we're going to have this joint meeting on March 6th, we also have a TC meeting scheduled on March 8th. Although we will try and avoid having another TC meeting on the 8th, it's possible there may be some items that require action. So please leave it on your calendar, and Aiden will let you know if we are able to cancel that and avoid having two meetings so close together. If there's any way that we could combine them, we certainly would. In this case, the Transportation Policy and Planning Board has 6 separate items that they have to deal with after the joint meeting. So it's going to be a long night all the way around. It's a little tough to have things at the front end and the back end of a joint meeting. So we're going to try and be as efficient as we can, but I just appreciate if you keep that on your calendar. So we do have the future agenda items in Legistar. We don't have a lot, and it's possible we might be able to push what we do have off to another meeting. But again, we'll keep you posted. Does anybody have any other future agenda topics that we aren't tracking that you would like to see us track? No? Okay, I don't see any hands. Okay, then we need a motion to adjourn, and we have any takers for that? We had Darren and Alder Biadzi, a couple other people with thirds and fourths there. So thanks so much, everybody. Another great meeting. Appreciate it, and take care. Thanks.